Hi guys, it's jerningam here. It says Boris Johnson's accused a course of misleading the public over NHS. So I'm going to press play.
Fast in this leadership, and today it was the turn of the NHS. The new Prime Minister chose the Pilgrim Hospital in Lincolnshire to make his grand announcement, and let staff know in person what they could expect.
So Boris Johnson's talking about spending, giving the police more money, the healthcare more money, services.
That's £21 million here, but £850 million across 20 hospitals or NHS trusts in England. New building and infrastructure.
Apparently.
Johnson also announced a further £1 billion across the whole of the NHS. He seemed particularly keen to hammer home one specific point about the cash.
I want to stress this is new money. This is new money. Don't forget that this is.
He's talking about new money.
New money
for the UK.
1.8 billion of new money. Thank you. Thank you. I think I've got the message across.
He may think he's got the message across, but it's a message that is disputed.
We don't think it's entirely new money. We do think it's new spending. So for £1 billion of the £1.8 billion, what we think is that the NHS trusts, hospitals and community services, mental health services, are now being allowed to spend cash that they've been building up by making savings over recent years. So that's cash that they've got already that they're now being allowed to spend.
Of course, today isn't the first time Boris Johnson has talked about NHS funding. Today's £1.8 billion is only about a tenth of what was written on the side of this bus, and healthcare experts believe it's less than a third of what's needed. Whether today's money is new or old, it's the latest in a long line of spending pledges the new Prime Minister has made, including £1 billion for extra police officers and £5 billion for schools, the sort of spending that usually precedes an election. And that's on top of £2.1 billion reserved for no-deal Brexit preparations, something Mr Johnson says publicly is still a 1,000,000 to 1 chance that EU diplomats said today was now his, quote, central scenario.
Lots of lorries there.
At around 8 a.m. to be precise, that position appears to have hardened. According to reports, the Prime Minister's new top aide, Dominic Cummings, called in special advisors from across government for a meeting to ensure that all departments are doing everything they can to be ready to leave the EU on October 31st, deal or
They keep saying October the 31st for no deal. Is it going to happen?
For frustrating no-deal preparations and left everyone in the room in no doubt that similar frustrations will not be tolerated. Visiting the
There's Jeremy Corbyn.
Bridge, Jeremy Corbyn said no deal equals no confidence vote.
There'll be a no confidence motion, of course.
I wish Jeremy Corbyn would give up on his silly stuff. He's always been a loudmouth, Jeremy Corbyn, in my opinion, guys. I don't know if you guys agree. Some of you may agree or not agree. He's going to try everything in his power to stop no deal, Jeremy Corbyn. We need to get out of the EU, in my belief.
There is now a majority in favour of independence in Scotland. No deal might not just mean no confidence vote, but no more union.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Health Minister, Chris Skidmore, and I asked him about the claim by some in the health sector that today's spending announcement does not represent new money.
No, this is new money. It's £1.8 billion on top of the £3.9 billion that was announced for capital spending back in 2017.
But it's in fact money that was given to hospitals that they saved by making cuts, but weren't allowed to spend. So now they've been told they can spend it. So it's not new money, it's just that you've now told them they can spend the money that they had.
No, I mean, this is an announcement today with an extra £1 billion of capital spending on top of the £850 million extra.
But it's the money they already had, isn't it?
This is an announcement today where we have seen additional money going into the system, additional money on top of the £3.9 billion.
Is it the money that hospitals saved that has now been told they can now spend on capital projects?
The money has been released.
Is it the money that came out of their original money?
No, because this is new money from the Treasury.
So it has nothing to do with the money that hospitals saved.
In terms of accounting, in terms of hospitals that were putting aside money, obviously when you look at examples of 20 trusts today, obviously They were waived for sustainability transformation partnership schemes that just missed out last time.
Please
Allocated.
answer the question.
And in
I'm trying
terms
to
of
work out where this money has come from.
so
What
the
we
money
know
has
is that
come from the
hospitals up and
treasury.
down the
It's new
country
money.
have been saving money for years, but have been unallowed, but have not been allowed to spend it. And the understanding from experts like the Nuffield Trust is that this is an accounting exercise that now releases that money to be spent. So it's money that they saved by cutting on services that they're now able to spend on capital projects. Are you saying that is untrue?
What we're seeing today is
that untrue?
No,
Yes
it's not.
or no?
No, it's not untrue.
So that's correct, what I've just said.
When it comes to capital, you can't just suddenly announce this on projects that suddenly appear. Projects are in the pipeline for a long period of time, and what we've been able to do today is release the money to make those projects finally happen.
How many hospitals are there in England and Wales?
Well, in terms of the hospitals, there's over 200. I mean, we've got 250 trusts, and we'll be looking at sort of, when it comes forward to our capital plan, a long-term infrastructure plan for both delivering new hospitals and refurbishing old hospitals.
But do you know how many hospitals there are in England?
Well, in terms of the hospitals in the world, I haven't got the numbers to hand. No, I mean, I started as health minister about 5 days ago,
Right.
so unfortunately, I haven't got that data to hand. Obviously, I know that when it comes to looking at our capital spend, we do need to invest for the future. We've announced the 20 trusts that will be receiving money. I've gone to one already, Croydon University Hospital. I've seen the intensive care units that desperately do need to be refurbished.
The question is whether you're announcing this really because you're trying to distract us from the real story, which is no deal planning. Now, when your boss, Matt Hancock, became health secretary, he said he couldn't guarantee that people wouldn't die as a result of the chaos ensuing from no deal. Can you now guarantee that?
It's my responsibility as the new health minister to deliver on no-deal Brexit planning. I'm attending these EXO meetings daily. Well, when it comes to a guarantee, I absolutely want to make sure that we have the medicine supplies, the medical devices supplies, everything in place, the dedicated health service channel with the aeroplanes ready to go.
So you do think there is a risk that the chaos of no deal could lead to the loss of life?
No, I don't.
From things like medicines disruption and
I don't accept the premise of your question. There is not
well,
a
your
chaos
boss's
of
premise.
There is not a chaos. There's not a chaos of no deal. We've now seen a new administration willing to put its hands into its pockets to pay additional money.
So you can guarantee there will be no disruption to the supply of medicine and medical supplies?
Well, I'm doing my best to make sure
that I you're doing your best, but can you guarantee that there will be no disruption?
Well, when it comes to those guarantees, obviously some of those are outside of government's controls. We will be doing everything in our power, both financially or otherwise, to make sure that we can reassure people so that doom-mongers cannot turn around and say that somehow life is at risk from Brexit.
So will the NHS and pensioners living outside in the European Union be better off or worse off or the same under a no-deal Brexit?
So when it comes to looking at British pensioners abroad, we are working very hard on ensuring that there are sustainable reciprocal healthcare.
Have you done
opportunities. Yes, we have been taking forward the work, and we've got additional.
Have you got an agreement?
No, we haven't got an agreement.
So you're not
with all
ready on
countries.
that?
We've got several bilateral agreements with a number of EU countries, and we want to make sure going forwards that we've got a complete agreement with the EU.
The biggest issue in the health services, the NHS Confederation says, is the shortage of staff. There's 100,000 vacancies, and they desperately need people from the European Union to fill those vacancies. On November the 1st, how will people from Europe come into Britain to take those vacancies?
Well, obviously, we have a programme in place when it comes to looking at the settled status, EU settled status. Obviously, we've got a new immigration system that we're putting in place from the 1st of January 2021.
No, I'm talking about new migrants, people taking those jobs. Yeah.
Well, we will be putting contingency measures in place. I think you'll see a number of announcements on immigration for the future.
So that's not sorted out either.
No, you're taking a day one scenario where you're thinking everything's not sorted out. Just because a lack of an announcement does not mean that there will be no announcement on these issues. As I've said, we are ramping up our no-deal preparation to ensure that when it comes to 31st October, all these contingency measures are in place, and you will definitely see measures so that we can continue to ensure the supply of labour for our NHS, which, as the Prime Minister has said, is his #1 priority.
Chris Skidmore, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's very interesting, guys, on the news channel about no-deal Brexit and will ever happen. More protesting riots in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong's summer of self-harm is now into its 3rd month and intensifying. Today, protesters didn't even wait for nightfall to go on the rampage, the target of their fury being the Legislative Council, the seat of the pro-China Hong Kong government. The building was heavily defended, and it needed to be. Thousands of demonstrators were kept at bay by huge barricades and riot police who defended the place by firing volley after volley of tear gas. It was an afternoon of turmoil.
9 weeks on, and this crisis is deepening by the day. And the most worrying aspect of it is here in normally law-abiding Hong Kong. The rift between the police and the people is getting worse. More and more, they're regarding each other as enemies.
This attack on their rulers was the protesters' response to a rare appearance inside the building earlier by Chief Executive Carrie Lam. It was her extradition bill that sparked this crisis, but today she offered no new concessions. And at a sometimes raucous news conference, I asked her the question on most people's minds here.
Why have you not resigned? Why have you not resigned?
I'm trying to respond to that. Thank you very much. I don't think at this point in time, resignation on myself or some of my colleagues will provide a better solution.
Today there was a new dimension in civil disobedience, a general strike that saw perhaps 500,000 workers skip the office and go to rallies like this instead. During rush hour, protesters disrupted train services. Needs must, they felt, but they did not enjoy it. The protester in the black and white shirt managed to stop an underground train, and while some commuters forced off were sympathetic, he apologized profusely. Closing the metro with little more than a foot in the door didn't come naturally to them, and the station manager knew it. He hugged one of the anguished young people who'd felt compelled to stop his trains. There have now been 5 consecutive nights of rioting here. The authorities have tried to label these people as hoodlums, but most of the protesters we've met are well-educated, erudite young people with extremely good manners. That they have resorted to doing this tells you just how high they regard the stakes. John Irvine, News at 10, Hong Kong.
Well, what a crazy world we live in. If people would listen to people in the world, then they wouldn't be doing these silly things. But it's like people don't want to listen. But it feels to some people. Moving on from that.
After 2 mass shootings, the president stuck to a tight script, condemning a culture that haunts America.
The shooter in El Paso posted a manifesto online consumed by racist hate. In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America. Hatred warps the mind, ravages the heart, and devours the soul.
He shared in their grief, calling for changes to mental health laws, but critically, not gun laws. Among the flowers in El Paso is the little
There's too many
details
guns
of
in
lives
America, as
left
all you
behind,
guys know.
not legislation
People are
or
sick of the
people's
killing and
minds.
stabbings and
There is
murders.
peaceful solemnity here. More and more people coming from both sides of the border to pay
crazy.
their respects. Whatever the president says or does, it is what they say to each other that matters the most right now. Joe Soto is hugging his daughter a little tighter today. He was there as the gunman opened fire.
I was ordering food for us. I paid, came around the corner. The lady from the cashier told me, "Oh, your number." And that's when I heard, shot, shooting, they're shooting. And when I looked over my shoulder, I saw the gun smoke. Literally, I was like maybe 10 feet away.
As shots rung out and people cowered under tables, Joe helped a group hide in a kitchen.
Older people, scared, looking at me. And I'm like, just don't say nothing, stay quiet. Called my wife, and I just kept seeing my kids Am I gonna make it? But I know.
Some who saved others couldn't save themselves. Jordan Anchondo was killed alongside her husband Andre while shielding their 2-year-old baby. Alan Tyrock's team treated him.
That was really sad, knowing that child would be growing up without a parent. I'm not sure who's going to take care of that child. I'm sure aunt or someone will step in, a grandparent. This child was so small. I mean, the mom protected that baby. What we saw this week, and unfortunately, was massive tissue destruction because these bullets, when they hit the body, they're meant to implode, which means they flatten out, and that causes more injury to bone, blood vessels, nervous tissue. It's meant to kill.
There is solidarity and defiance here, but fear too, with no promise that it won't happen again. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, El Paso, Texas.
Well, it's a very, very strange world sometimes, as you guys know. Would be nice if the world was a nicer place, but be wishful thinking. But anyway, guys, I hope you've all enjoyed this video. Before I go, I'm going to check the Tesco's thing and some other things before I go. So check out the Tesco's shopping centre in the UK.
Britain's biggest retailer is set to get ever so slightly smaller. Tesco is highly profitable, but wants to be even more so. The group's metro stores, like this one in Cardiff, will bear the brunt of job cuts designed to save money.
Our members, all store members in Tesco, are shocked and dismayed by the company's announcement today. We're going to enter into meaningful consultation with the business, and we're going to interrogate the business case that they're putting forward.
Tesco is in the final stages of a turnaround plan.
It's been a very, very strong year for the business.
When Dave Lewis arrived at Tesco as chief executive 5 years ago,
Most of you guys don't know what Tesco is. It's a food place in the UK. Like Asda's a food place as well.
4,500 job cuts announced today will be made by the end of September. The majority will go from Tesco's 153 metro stores. Some staff at 134 express stores will also be affected. Since the beginning of the year, Tesco has reduced its UK workforce by 13,500 people. Back in January, it was staff at food counters in Tesco supermarkets who were laid off. Now, smaller stores are being targeted. Tesco launched its metro and express formats at the heart of communities in the early 1990s to great success. But shopping habits are changing. Spending is moving online and high streets are thinning.
We're not doing the big bulk shop we once did. We're shopping more frequently and we're spending less each time. So Tesco stores on high streets have become ever more important, but we're just not spending as much per trip as we once did.
Tesco is trying to move with the times. A year ago, it launched Jack's, a discount brand designed to take on the likes of Aldi and Lidl, who've been stealing Tesco's customers for years. Tesco remains the biggest private sector employer in Britain. There's likely to be more change to come. 3 years ago, Tesco set itself the target of cutting its costs by £1.5 billion, and the job cuts announced today means that target has more or less been reached. But the ongoing shift to online spending and automation means that further upheaval at Tesco and across the retail sector is likely. Thank you for shopping at Tesco. Self-service tills are well established. Tesco's also trialling till-free stores where shoppers scan and pay using smartphones. The store of the future will almost certainly be staffed, but by fewer people.
Well, more technology to move on then.
When two nuclear-armed nations confront one another over a disputed border in the shadow of the Himalayas, the last thing a fragile peace needs is more fuel on the fire. And you get a sense of the fury in the Indian parliament today when the government there ended Kashmir's semi-autonomy, and anger matched by protests in Delhi and Islamabad.
This amounts to burning the bridges which connected Kashmir to the rest of India. And we are here because we know that this is no solution to the Kashmir problem. And it is not just about Kashmir. It is also a prelude to destroying the constitutional rights and liberties of all Indians.
It is a very big development, and the people of Jammu and Kashmir condemn
all such activities on the part of India. This is a dispute that has cost thousands of lives since independence from Britain and the partition of India in 1947. Kashmir is sandwiched between India and Pakistan and claimed by both sides. A so-called line of control splits the administration of the region into two. Here, India rules over the only Muslim-majority state in their nation. But Article 370 of the Constitution guarantees the Kashmiris their own flag and independence, except over foreign affairs and defence. Those rights will now be signed away by India's hardline Hindu nationalist Prime Minister Narendra Modi, making good an election promise. Pakistan and India have fought over Kashmir many times. Tensions rose again this year when Pakistan shot down 2 Indian warplanes after India attacked militants it says were backed by Pakistan. The Indian government has poured tens of thousands more troops into what is already a heavily militarized zone and told tourists to go home. They're braced.
So it looks like tensions are there with India and Pakistan then.
Grave consequences in terms of an upsurge
The army there, I think.
of Kashmiri militancy, because Kashmiri militants now have a very, very clear agenda. They want independence. This was not necessarily the case when Kashmir was in kind of an ambiguous state of limbo.
Tonight, Kashmir is under a curfew. Opposition leaders are under house arrest. And this fault line between the subcontinent's Hindu and Muslim populations is opening up again.
Well, crazy world we live in. Things just get more better and better, don't they? I'm joking, by the way, they don't, they get more worse.
Hello and welcome to ITV News Central, live across the Midlands.
With the new Prime Minister ordering a review of HS2, tonight we're looking at the future of high-speed rail and its impact across our region.
The high-speed rail line has been 10 years in the making, and behind me, building work is underway here at Curzon Street. This is the site of its flagship station here in Birmingham.
We're also in Towton in Nottinghamshire, which is key to the project and its extension to the north. But with continued political uncertainty, is HS2 still on track?
Phase 1 of HS2 runs from London Euston to Birmingham. Phase 2 is effectively the Y split, with one line running from Birmingham up to Manchester,
and the other from Leeds via Towton. On tonight's programme, we'll be looking at the spiralling cost of the project, the benefits it could bring to the Midlands, but also the human and environmental costs.
I'm at London Euston, where preparatory work has already started in anticipation of HS2.
And I'll be on the UK's first and so far only high-speed rail line, finding out what it's like and what impact it's had.
Good evening to you. HS2 might still be a long way off, but for people here in Birmingham, it already seems pretty real. I'm here at Curzon Street, where the 6-acre site has been worked on by 350 people so far for months, paving the way for the West Midlands hub. But to date, not an inch of track has been laid, and now the new Prime Minister Boris Johnson has ordered a review into a project which is going to cost anywhere between 56 billion and 100 billion pounds, depending on who you believe. Well, tonight, in an exclusive poll for this programme, we can reveal that only 26% of people in the Midlands actually support it. We'll be looking at the pros and the cons of the project in a moment. But first, let's hear from 3 groups of people whose lives have already been massively affected by HS2. Andy Bevan reports.
3 letters from HS2 to 3 very different property owners, all battling for compensation. But these documents have one thing in common. They all contain bad news. The Taroney family have been in the scrap metal business since the 1950s. Their 7 yards in Aston lie in the path of the Phase 1 line, and they must move out by October. But they're entitled to compensation, estimated at £2.9 million. Back in November 2016, Russell Taroney put their case to a House of Lords Select Committee, and was given this assurance by HS2.
We are agreed that he will put forward information to allow a business case to be taken forward for an early advance payment of that compensation.
The Tyrones took that to mean money up front, but HS2 has since told them it only pays out once a property is vacated. To buy and prepare a new site, Russell Tyrone has had to cash in 3 pensions and take out a £2 million bridging loan on the family home. HS2 has paid £556,000 for 2 of the Tyrone yards already handed over, but that's less than 20% of what the family say they're owed, and they're staying put until they get it.
This land is our freehold, this is ours, so if they think they can take it off us without paying for it rightly, then they've got another thing coming.
When Andy and Lynn Craddock moved to Hopton near Stafford in 2013, they knew HS2 was probably coming, but they were told it would run in a tunnel and their glorious countryside view would stay. The couple both now have health problems and their steep garden is difficult to manage, so last October they decided to sell up and retire to France. But when they returned from a house hunting trip across the Channel, there was a shock.
We didn't get a single person inquire about the house at all. And
because the village is blighted.
Exactly.
No one wants to buy in Hopton.
The village is full of for sale signs because now the Phase 2B line is planned to run above ground, just yards from homes like the Craddocks. Engineers have already been testing the soil. So the couple applied for HS2 to buy their house, but they've been turned down twice because, says HS2, they knew about the line when they moved in.
When they rejected it, I actually had a breakdown and it caused a lot of problems mentally for me. So I picked myself up and we reapplied, and that's where we are at the moment.
Diane Scott has been in her 17th century cottage at Long Eaton in Derbyshire for 19 years and has spent £100,000 updating it. But it lies in the Phase 2B safeguarding zone and is earmarked for demolition. The cottage can only be sold to HS2, but last November a figure of £290,000 was agreed and contracts were drawn up. Then, in March, Diane got a letter from HS2 reducing the valuation by £50,000.
I was absolutely, well, I was furious. I couldn't believe it. The fact that the surveyor hadn't even been round to my property to view it.
Diane's MP complained to HS2 and got a reply from Chief Executive Mark Thurston saying he considered the lower valuation to be reasonable.
I'm just told it's taxpayers' money, and well, I'm a taxpayer, you know. Yeah, it's criminal what they've done.
Even HS2 doesn't know how many more of these letters it'll have to send out, but one thing's for certain, as the line makes its way through the Midlands, so does the misery. Andy Bevan, ITV News.
3 very different stories of people affected by the HS2 line. Well, Audrey Hurrell from Trowell in Nottinghamshire is also affected by the planned route and joins us now. Audrey, HS2 have just told you recently that they want your house.
That's right. About 6 weeks ago, they posted a letter through the letterbox and told us that we were taking 20 houses down our street, and that's it. Nothing we could do.
And this is your forever house, isn't it?
Yes, we moved into a bungalow 6 years ago because my husband struggles with the stairs. We thought, that's it, like you say, forever house. And yeah, we're just gutted that they're thinking of taking us, knocking us down.
Yeah, oh, well, I can imagine your reaction, but what sort of correspondence have you had from HS2? What have they said?
All we've had is the letter what they posted through the door telling us that we was one of 20 houses, and we've been to a meeting.
This is happening in Nottinghamshire.
So we're still
We're talking about houses and building over the wetways and
that it's
stuff.
going to affect the value of your house.
UK it is.
I mean, they're not going to, apart from the fact they're not going to pay us what it's worth, they say they will, but will they? And where do we find somewhere at that value anyway? And what suits us, bungalow-wise and what have you? So it's only being built, so we're just
waiting to see.
Just waiting. It's terrible.
So what do you do now then, Audrey? What are the plans?
Sit and wait and see what's going to go on. Wait till they confirm it, really. They said it's another 2 or 3 years before it's confirmed that it's going to be down our street, and then we'll think again of where we go, what we do, and everything else that's going on.
So in the meantime, you're living with the uncertainty.
We're just living
day to day and just talk to the neighbours. They're all the same, and just, well, that's it. There's nothing you can do, is there? Just sit in limbo, basically.
Well, we certainly hope it does work out for you, Audrey, and we hope you get some news from HS2 quite soon.
So do we. Thank you.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Well, HS2 Limited do say that they can't comment on individual cases, but we will be speaking to the Chief Executive Officer about the project later in this programme. So what about the economics? Well, experts predict that the economic benefits of HS2 for the East Midlands could be huge. The creation of the East Midlands hub at Toton Sidings could cost around £500 million. But experts predict it could be worth 3 times that for the whole of the East Midlands in the long term. Well, the government's current plans would also see the extension of the tram line from here to the hub, which is about half a mile away, sort of in that direction. I'm joined now by Brent Poland from Stop HS2 Erewash. And Brent, it does sound on the face of it that there's going to be some great economic benefits for people in the entire region.
Completely refute that. All economic benefits are subsidised by us, the taxpayers. So we're actually going to be funding these. They're going to say they're going to create jobs, but how many jobs are they actually going to create? And whose money are they actually spending? We're going to be paying for HS2 in this local area twofold. Central government taxes, which goes towards building HS2, and then, of course, the mess that HS2 has to make, we then have to clean up with our local taxes. So we don't believe it's actually going to create an economic case that's worthwhile and viable for us. We already have a railway line, so any incremental economic value we should already have. It's not as if we're getting something new.
But we do have to increase capacity.
Yeah, we do have to increase capacity at our local hospital, which has got bed cuts at the moment. We increase capacity in our primary and secondary schools. Nobody died yesterday because of railway capacity. I know it's important, but there are other solutions to railway capacity besides spending £100 billion plus. The International Space Station costs that. It really is solving a problem by using lots of money, which could be created another way. Great Central Line could be reopened. Other ways to reduce capacity, including cutting demand, opening old railways. So we don't agree that capacity is something that we think is a different rationale that HS2 have had. They keep changing the rationale.
Okay, Brent, we'll have to leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Now, according to our survey, half of all respondents do think it's important to have more capacity on trains between the Midlands and London. But almost 2/3 don't think HS2 will be value for money. It was originally estimated to cost £33 billion, but that figure has since soared. The new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has reportedly said it could cost as much as £100 billion. But those championing the project say the investment is worth it in the long term. Mark Goff has been looking at whether High Speed 2 will bring high returns for the Midlands, and he begins his report on a train so overcrowded that he's had to abandon his broadcast camera and film it on his mobile phone.
This is the 7:15 from University Station through to Lichfield, and it's pretty busy as normal. But the government reckons that HS2 will make crowded trains a thing of the past. At the moment, intercity trains, commuter trains, and freight trains all use the same lines. The thinking is that the intercity services will switch to the new high-speed line, and that should create more space on the old existing lines for more commuter trains. And it's needed. More and more people are using the trains more and more often. In the last 10 years, passenger journeys in the Midlands have gone up from 68.3 million to 129.3 million. But HS2 is also about improving the economy. HS2 Limited, the company set up to build the line, say it'll be a catalyst for growth in the country, creating 30,000 jobs just to build it, 3,000 more to run it, and 2,000 apprenticeships. It'll also give Midlands firms a wider pool of potential employees and help attract and keep talent. And, they say, it'll bring £92 billion to the UK economy. Then there are the knock-on effects. HS2 says for every pound the line costs to build, it'll bring £2.30 in economic growth. And many agree. The West Midlands Combined Authority says it'll create 100,000 jobs in the whole region, adding £14 billion to the local economy. This is the Clayton Hotel, which is owned by an Irish hotel chain. From the rooms, they can see the preparatory work for the HS2 station at Curzon Street. And because of HS2, they're adding 44 more rooms and building a second hotel in the city centre. For them, HS2 makes Birmingham a great place to invest.
HS2 linking to London will be 40 minutes. It means that Birmingham most definitely will become probably the second largest corporate city in the UK. We see kind of the next 10 years as a lot of expanding, a lot of positive things happening in the city.
The station at Towton will bring 13,350 jobs and £5.4 billion to the economy, according to reports from local councils. But the Government Affairs Committee in 2015 said investing in transport infrastructure doesn't necessarily lead to economic growth. And in 2014, the University of Oxford said it can't be assumed that HS2 will automatically bring economic growth. HS2 has changed its business case since those reports came out, but MPs still say more up-to-date analysis of the economic benefits is needed. Mark Goff, ITV News.
Our poll shows that 26% of people are in favour of HS2. It also revealed that 39% oppose it altogether, while 26% were neutral. The campaign group, Stop HS2, was set up in 2010. Earlier, we spoke to Joe Rukin from the campaign about our poll, which also shows more than half of those questioned feel it's important to increase capacity between London and the Midlands.
The fact that people say that the railways need new capacity and that they don't want HS2 shows that the public really understand that this case for HS2 is all spin. It doesn't deliver capacity where it is needed, and it will suck up transport investment. It requires £11 billion worth of cuts to existing rail services.
Well, 54% of people in our poll said they were concerned about the environmental impact of HS2. Yet HS2 claims it is the green alternative. Charlotte Cross has been looking at the claims and the counterclaims.
Sellers Wood in Nottingham is a gem at the very heart of the English countryside, offering a rare and varied habitat for the wildlife it houses. But Phase 2 of HS2 is due to destroy a huge chunk of the surrounding woodland. And environmental groups have voiced serious concerns about this kind of damage all along the route.
We think HS2 have underestimated the impact on wildlife all the way through the consultation. There are phrases in the consultation talking about temporary loss of habitat. But we don't believe that's an accurate phrase. The habitat will be lost forever. You know, habitats can take centuries, if not longer, to evolve. So we won't have the quality of habitats that we currently have today.
In Birmingham, Park Hall Wildlife Reserve near Castle Vale has already been taken over by HS2, ready for construction work to begin. The Wildlife Trust here estimates they'll lose up to 90% of this ancient woodland, and they're worried about pollution from the building work running into the River Tame.
And that forms one of the biggest and most emotive arguments against HS2. It'll destroy valuable habitats with indirect impact on environments just like this too. And campaigners say it simply isn't worth it. But HS2 insists it is taking measures to mitigate the damage it's causing.
This is how they plan to do it, creating what they've called a green corridor.
And will create new homes for wildlife, including a bat house.
And they've already started creating some of those new habitats, like this one in Hams Hall in Birmingham. They say they're aiming to be the most environmentally friendly infrastructure project the country's ever seen.
In reality, when you're delivering infrastructure of the scale of HS2 and the benefits that it will bring, there is no railway routes that can avoid everything. What we've been doing is planning for many years to strike the right balance between avoiding sensitive environmental features and communities to deliver what is going to be much more improved and reliable service with much more increased capacity.
And going by train is currently one of the most environmentally friendly ways to travel. Estimates for the carbon emissions of Phase 2 are 13.6 grams of carbon dioxide per passenger per kilometre when it opens in 2027. By 2041, they say that'll be down to 2.9 grams. By comparison, they say intercity rail currently emits 22 grams, and cars travelling city to city emit 67.
Rail travel is much better than car travel, but not rail projects like HS2. HS2 is incredibly environmentally damaging. Clearly, we could do much better things with that money, starting with investment in the existing rail network, improving capacity, improving frequency, electrifying lines. All of those things would be much cheaper and have much greater effects on people's lives.
HS2 says these alternatives wouldn't work. But technology is advancing all the time. Virgin has already developed a futuristic tube, which it claims can zip people between cities at a fraction of the cost of high-speed rail. So the question is this: will the environment be left paying the price for a system which could be out of date before it even opens?
Well, assuming HS2 does go ahead, it won't be the UK's first high-speed rail line. HS1 runs from St Pancras International in London down to the Channel Tunnel. Eurostar uses it, and South Eastern runs a domestic high-speed service to the south coast. Our reporter Yasmin Bodelbai is live on one of those trains for us now. Yasmin, where are you?
I am hurtling through the 140 miles an hour. Yes, we are live on a high-speed train, so if the signal does drop out, please do bear with us. There's nothing like a little bit of jeopardy, is there, on live telly? In a couple of minutes' time, we're going to be pulling into Ashford International. So the journey from St Pancras in the past would have taken about an hour and 20 minutes. Today, on a high-speed train, it can take under 40 minutes. It was 10 years ago that High Speed 2, the planned proposals were put ahead, and it was also 10 years ago that this domestic high-speed rail line launched, and since then, over 100 million passengers have used it. Let's grab a quick word with just one of them now. Kathy, you travel a long way, don't you, for work? What has high-speed rail meant for you on a daily basis?
Well, I travel every day from Ramsgate into St Pancras and then onto Goldhawk Road, which is in about 2.5 hours door to door, so every second really counts. Without the high-speed link, it'll probably take me another 20-30 minutes, so that's an extra hour of my day travelling, so it saves an awful lot of time.
So a great big impact for you, but it is fair to say that when HS1 was being planned, there was a lot of opposition. People worried about the countryside, worried about their homes, about noise, all the things that we've been talking about, Billy, this evening. Let's put that to Paul Prentice now from South Eastern Trains.
We were doing so well there, weren't we? But they were going 140 miles an hour down there in Kent, so they did pretty well. I'm joined now by Mark Thurston, quite as quick as that guy there, actually. Joined now by Mark Thurston, the Chief Executive Officer of HS2 Limited. Mark, 63% of people, according to our poll, don't think HS2 is a good idea. We've heard already on the programme about the environmental impact, the impact on people's lives, the escalating cost. Is it worth it?
What we have to remember, Matt, is that HS2 is much more than a railway. This will transform our rail network, will become the spine of our rail system, joining north and south. It will transform our transport system, actually, because one of the things that HS2 will do will create some massive connectivity between our major cities. It will create capacity on the existing network, which will allow us not just to run better local services, but will allow us to get roads and lorries off onto the railway.
Just on that point of capacity, a lot of people saying, yes, this is great if you want to get from London to Birmingham quickly, but what about if you want to get to Coventry, to Leicester, to Nottingham? We can create that space for capacity, but that doesn't necessarily mean the capacity is going to instantly be there.
Oh, once you move all the high-speed traffic onto the new dedicated high-speed system, I mean, you'll be able to travel from here in the Midlands to Leeds, Manchester or Birmingham in about 45 minutes. We'll have an interchange in the East Midlands. The new interchange at Tote will transform that part of the East Midlands. And of course, if you're travelling at the moment between Birmingham and Leeds, it takes about 2 hours by train. Once we've got the high-speed system in place, there's huge capacity then for much better local services.
Okay, what about the cost? It was originally going to be 30-odd billion, then it went up to 50-odd billion. That could be now 86 billion. Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, the other day said it could be 100 billion. How much is it going to cost?
So that's what we've been working on. I said at the end of last year that we have cost pressures, and we've been working with our contractors, with our designers, to make the scheme affordable. Of course, HS2 has to be value for money. It's a huge amount of taxpayers' money. but we mustn't lose sight of the benefits. HS2 will transform our country. It's about bringing actually Britain together. The Prime Minister over the weekend in Manchester talked about how we have this north-south divide on our transport systems, and HS2 is a part of a much broader agenda to give us much better rail services around the country, and certainly much better rail services here in the Midlands and into the north of England.
Do you know how much it's going to cost ultimately?
That's what we continue to work on. Obviously, new administration has come into place only in the last few days. We're probably expecting to meet the new Secretary of State next week, so we'll need in due course to brief him and the new ministerial team on where we think HS2 is going to be.
Because the difficulty seems to be, to me, if we don't know how much it's going to cost, how can we possibly estimate whatever economic benefits there will be down the line?
History tells us, and these big projects are all the same, that they divide opinion. To come back to your question about your poll, and for 10 years of its existence now, HS2 has clearly divided opinion both locally and nationally. But experience says that these major transport arteries ultimately deliver huge benefit to the economy, whether it's the major road corridors, the M25, and in fact, your colleague there who was on the fast link to the Kent coast, which allows us now to go right to London, to the Paris city centre. So the benefits always prove on transport to be worth it.
Just quickly, 10 seconds left. Are you worried about this review that the Prime Minister has ordered?
No, of course a new administration is going to review something as big and as important as HS2, and we're ready for that, and we expect that to play out over the next few weeks.
There's my hand.
Thurston, Chief
Hand!
Executive Officer of HS2.
The
Thank you very
hand!
much for talking to us on the programme.
Fist hand. The time is
controversial
12:30.
and has always been a deeply political issue dividing the parties. The scheme was started under a Labour government and driven forward by the Conservatives. However, the new Prime Minister hasn't always sounded totally convinced. Our political correspondent, Alison Mackenzie, joins us now from Euston Station in London, where HS2 trains from the Midlands are due to start arriving in 7 years. Alison.
Yes, good evening from Euston. £1.5 billion is being spent here getting ready for HS2. Our cameras have been here all day. Contractors on site clearing the way, demolishing, a hotel I stayed at once is no longer there. But politically, we saw Boris Johnson, didn't we, on the steps of Downing Street declaring his passion for big rail projects, and we learned his views on HS2 on the ITV Leaders Debate in answer to a question from Julie Etchingham.
Should HS2 be abandoned, Mr. Johnson?
I don't think it should be abandoned. I think it's extremely expensive, and I think the business case is dubious. I think we should examine it. We should do a review, and I want to see whether the cash, which is huge, 100 billion, should be better prioritised in the north of the country.
Now, in that exclusive YouGov survey, we did see a difference between Remain and Leave voters, so that might affect the Prime Minister's view. Leave voters, it showed us, by YouGov, are much more likely to oppose HS2 than Remainers, so could that affect... No Transport Ministers here with me tonight. We offered the Secretary of State, Grant Shapps, to come on and answer our questions. He preferred not available. But they did say in a statement to us, the purpose of the review is to establish if the government is satisfied that HS2 represents value for money. And on that Y plan section of the route, they say the review will decide whether or how to proceed. And of course, the Y plan doesn't even come before Parliament until 2020.
Okay, Alison in Westminster, thank you. Interesting stuff. Well, that is almost it from us for tonight. Here at Curzon Street, you can see the effects of the preparatory work so far of HS2, but it's still years away from being operational. The first trains won't be tested on the Birmingham to London line until 2024, and we won't be able to use them until 2 years later when the line opens in 2026. That's if it all happens on time. Well, that's goodbye from the team here in Birmingham and over to Samina, where the wait for HS2 will be even longer.
Yes, the plans here haven't even been signed off. Birmingham to Manchester and Birmingham to Leeds via Totem will only start after all bills are finally passed in 2023. If everything does go to plan, the full network is expected to open 10 years later. According to our survey, a third of people we spoke to don't believe the first phase will ever happen. However, if you're a supporter of HS2, you can take comfort from the fact that a third do think it will happen. Wesley Smith will have a full roundup of the day's news in our late bulletin at 10:30. Of course, there's more of the day's news on our website. For now, though, from the team here and in Birmingham and indeed throughout the country, from all of us, good night.
I'll tell you what, that was a long video. Extremely long video, guys. But anyway, guys, keep trying to end the video, and I keep showing more things on here. Right, just give me a second.
Parts of Kashmir under lockdown. Thousands of Indian troops monitor checkpoints, neighborhoods and squares. And more soldiers are arriving. Schools and colleges are shut overnight. Mobile internet is blocked. Politicians are appealing for calm.
I appeal to the people of the state, Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, that they should maintain peace and have patience.
We're back in 2 minutes, guys. I'm just going somewhere. Then we can still keep filming the videos that I want to show. Give me a second. Right, guys, I'm back. Press play on the TV.
It is very necessary. We should not take any step that will disturb peace in the region.
By Sunday, India put 3 prominent Kashmiri politicians under house arrest. 2 of them former chief ministers. It's also banned public rallies. This former leader says he doesn't know what's in store. The uncertainty prevailed for much of the
I think the whole country is a mess sometimes.
in Kashmir were packed into trains. Tourists and pilgrims were ordered to leave. The Indian government says there are intelligence reports about possible attacks on the annual Amarnath pilgrimage. But some think there could be something larger in the works.
In terms of these very dramatic moves, such as ordering the mandatory evacuations of tourists and closing schools down, putting local leaders under house arrest, to me that suggests that something is much greater is at play than a mere terrorist threat. There have been terrorist threats in Kashmir many times before, and the Indian authorities do not act like this. So I really think that there's something broader at play. It seems like India is trying to head off possible unrest, which suggests that India could be planning to make some sort of major move, such as revoking Kashmir's autonomous status.
Something that's unacceptable for many here.
Article 35A and Article 370 is our basic constitutional right. We have made an agreement with India on the basis of these articles. And now they are trying to derail or revoke these articles. This is an injustice to us. Kashmiris are not going to tolerate this injustice.
Kashmir is one of the most militarized regions in the world, claimed by both India and Pakistan. Over the past few days, tensions are high between the 2 nuclear-powered neighbors as they traded accusations of attacks on each other. Islamabad is accusing India of using banned cluster bombs. New Delhi says Pakistan is sending fighters to stage attacks across the border. The valley is on the edge. Amid fear,
I'm surprised the valley's on the edge.
over how little is known.
I don't know what's happening around the bloody world anyway.
Priyanka Gupta, Al Jazeera.
The train now arriving in York, the future of passenger transport.
on the East Coast Main Line. There to welcome it, a famous face from the past, the Mallard, the steam train that broke the world speed record in the 30s, lining up beside a new model now looking to break some records of its own. Driver Nick Wilson thoroughly impressed with his new County Durham built kit.
It's lovely to drive, very quiet compared to what we've had before. It's warm in the winter, it's cool in the summer, it's great.
And a proud feeling to be able to bring it through the northeast where it's built?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. There's a lot of train history, and so it's nice that they were built here. Bringing them back here, definitely.
The man standing guard on the Mallard, meanwhile, still preferring old school railway charm.
It's a character, isn't it? All steam engines, their own characters, you know, their own individuality. And to me, the modern traction today, irrespective of what they are, they've just got no character about them.
But LNER is convinced modern passengers will quickly be won over by what the Azuma has to offer. So how does this new train measure up? In standard class, for a start, you'll find more seats with greater legroom, giving, we're told, much more comfort. There's also a plug point at every single seat. In first class, there's even greater comfort with reclining seats, an improved complimentary menu, thanks very much, and in addition to plug points, there's a USB point at every single seat. Pretty handy if you want to charge your phone. Getting the Azuma onto the East Coast Main Line hasn't been easy or cheap. The project cost $2.7 billion. It took more than 10 years, ran 8 months late, and won't hit promises on shorter journey times till 2021. Is this really value for money in your view, this new service?
Yes, absolutely. Not only, of course, has it created jobs in the northeast through the manufacturing stages with the factory at Newton Aycliffe, but it's going to deliver economic benefits to all the towns and cities served by the East Coast Main Line for the next 3 decades.
It could have happened faster though, couldn't it, all of this?
Not much faster. It's been a really intense project. It's a big project, of course. Just at LNER, we've got over 2,000 staff to train. And we're working with Network Rail and Hitachi to solve all of the various technical challenges that do come with introducing a train.
The firm belief at LNER that the Azuma will now enjoy a long and much-loved journey of its own into Northeast Railway history.
Oh, right, guys, I think my phone's just died on me. And, like I say, I hope you guys have all enjoyed the video. And please like, comment, subscribe. Share these videos with your friends. In the next broadcast. Thank you for joining me. See you in the next one. Peace.